Son of Godzilla is best known for two things. One, the Godzilla suit is said to be the most ugly of them all, which it is. And two, people hate Baby Godzilla. Most folk I know find the design utterly repulsive, although apparently it's quite popular in Japan. But what do the Japanese know about Godzilla? Anyway, this is the second of the Island films. Set away from an expensive to build model city, the budget has been squeezed. But thankfully, the Godzilla films don't look too cheap yet. Son of Godzilla isn't a gem in the Toho crown. However, it really isn't that bad, and has some moments worth celebrating, including one of the most impressive kaiju in all of the Godzilla franchise. The premise is set up pretty quickly. Sol Gel Island is home to a UN science station on a secret mission, a journalist who drops by hoping to get a story, and what appears to be a beautiful native girl, which has become something of a trope in Godzilla films. She turns out not to be a native girl, but the daughter of a long-dead scientist. The island is also home to giant praying mantises. Researchers are investigating the use of weather control to boost food production for a growing population. The entire project has to be kept secret, as in the wrong hands, it could be used as a weapon to freeze vast areas. Straight away you're thinking, that's going to be used at the end of the film to stop giant monsters. It's interesting how Japanese pop culture continues that theme of fear around weapons of mass destruction. Unfortunately for our research team, a rogue blast causes an irradiating superheating event, which leaves the island uninhabitable for some time. After waiting inside the base until it's safe to go outside, the scientists go and inspect the damage. It looks like those giant praying mantises have become even more giant. They have become Gimantis. In the American dub anyway, but in the original version I watched, they are simply called Kamacuras. This allows for a bit of classic Godzilla pseudoscience, when the professor says the heat and radiation must have caused a mutation causing the giant mantises to become even bigger. Yeah, but what if? No, it must be that. Let's never question it. It's those Gimantis, and I'll use Gimantis rather than Kamacuras because I find it easier to say and it sounds cooler, who dig up a mound of earth, revealing an egg. Once cracked open, an ugly as fuck Baby Godzilla emerges, and they continue their assault on the poor defenseless reptile. The cries, however, attract the full-size Godzilla daddy, or mummy, or maybe something in between. We always assume he's a he, but we don't know. The film essentially follows two different story threads. The humans trying to survive on such an uninhabitable island after their base is all but destroyed, and the baby Godzilla being tutored by a full-size thing. Godzilla's parental skills are questionable. Yes, he comes and rescues the baby from the Gimantises, but he drags the poor thing by its tail. Let's dive right into that Baby Godzilla suit, shall we? Baby G is smooth and pudgy, almost slimy looking. The way it crawls looks more like it's being dragged on a rope. It looks odd. When you watch the 1954 original, you can't imagine that Godzilla perhaps started off looking like this. But maybe it didn't. Baby G looks not fully formed, which makes sense given that he was hatched prematurely. I've read nothing over the years to suggest premature hatching was a design consideration, but for reasons of headcanon, that embryonic underdeveloped look makes sense contextually. He wasn't ready to hatch. He was dug up and forced out early. And this isn't the Baby G we see throughout the film. He quickly develops, and the second suit is much better. I actually don't mind it at all. It even has the beginnings of the dorsal spines on his back. In fact, I actually quite like it. Unlike the other suit, I think this one is actually cute, and at least it looks to be from the same species as Godzilla. I'd go as far as to say that the second stage Baby G is the best looking Godzilla in this entire film. But then again, actual Godzilla is pretty awful. The main problem is the head. It's pretty damn hideous. So far, we've seen a few Godzilla designs, and although they are all different, they all match thematically, changing some aspects but remaining unquestionably Godzilla. If you look at the entire body, this is clearly Godzilla, but just by seeing the head, this looks like a cheap Godzilla knockoff or a fan-made suit made for a convention. The eyes are very high up and the overall shape is not pleasant at all. Those eyes are now cartoony black and white, rather than the more realistic eyes we had in the last couple of films. The jaw looks very mechanical, you can see where it hinges. The Godzilla suit has a more human shape to it, perhaps to try and humanise the Big G to make the parental aspect more relatable. But it looks poor. It's never looked more like a man in a suit, and it's not even Haruo Nakajima in the suit this time, apart from the water scenes which used an old suit. Instead, Godzilla is played by Seiji Inaka and Hiroshi Sakita, who were taller to give a greater height difference from Baby G. The reason two actors played the role is because Seiji Inaka broke his fingers playing baseball partway into production.
Are you ready for a speedball?
So Hiroshi Sakita took over his duties. The body is poor, but maybe not as bad as some internet communities make out. If the head was better, we'd probably forgive it the dorsal spikes, which aren't that spiky. This is not a very imposing design at all, and lacks any of the fierceness we've come to expect. From behind, it looks rather good. The legs look chunky and the tail is nicely segmented. But from all other angles, it looks like a textured sack with a Godzilla head stuck on top. The suit does seem to allow for good movement though, so in the few scenes where he does actually fight, instead of kicking rocks, he is able to grapple with the island's beasts. The film does get some things very right though, such as the Gimantis, the giant praying mantis creatures. They look terrifying. The Gimantis are operated by strings rather than a guy in a suit, and therefore they have a unique look and movement to them. I love the way they walk, and when they rear up in a threatening manner, they're very imposing. The claws look lethal. Instead of having a kaiju-type personality, these are just massive insects and continue to behave like insects, but their prey is much larger now and their strength much more obvious. But the monster highlight in this kaiju movie is the Kumonga, a giant spider. Arachnophobes will look away from the screen at the impressively realistic way the Kumonga moves. It isn't in the film for much, but it makes quite a visual impact. Kumonga's stabber, for want of a better word, is terrifying. The entire creature is huge, and like the Gimantis, is operated like a huge string puppet. It must have been a nightmare to control, but the team did a fantastic job, and it never looks camp or stupid. I genuinely think Kumonga is one of the absolute best creature creations in Godzilla. The action scenes in this film are interesting, even if they aren't franchise highlights. It's always fun to watch Godzilla suplex a giant insect. And like with Ebra in the previous films, the baddies here aren't regular man-in-a-suit creatures, so there's an added level of creativity around their movements. This means we see something which differs from what you tend to see in a kaiju battle. There's a lot of humour in this film, but a lot of that comes from Godzilla being a shit parent. Godzilla doesn't seem very paternal. He leaves Baby G behind to crawl around. Most of the laughs are at Baby G's expense, but given that your immediate reaction if you saw it would be to hit it in the face with a brick and then set fire to it just to be on the safe side, you don't mind laughing at it. Baby G getting hit in the face with a rock is quite funny, or Godzilla standing on its tail. Also, Baby G playing football, falling over and hurting his ass. Godzilla accidentally hitting Baby G with his tail is also quite funny, but was it really an accident? Parenthood doesn't seem to come naturally to Godzilla, but eventually they seem to get the idea, and Godzilla seems quite human-like. Teaching Baby G to do atomic breath and get in smoke rings feels fairly anthropomorphic. Even the way Godzilla threatens to hit Baby G looks very human. To be fair though, I think I'd want to wallop him as well if he keeps making that braying donkey Eeyore sound. As a 45-year-old practically adult male, I found myself warming to Baby G. This was actually the first Godzilla film I ever saw back in 1990, when I was 9 or 10 years old, and I remember loving the parent-child dynamic back then. The final scene where Godzilla and Baby G are left in the snow upset me as a kid. The original concept was for Godzilla to walk away and begrudgingly return, which would have been worse. At least there's a sense of affection at the end of the film. The Gimantis and Kumonga are visual highlights in a film which doesn't have many other standout moments, other than some comedic instances. As this is an island, There are no cities, but the weather station looks okay. It's nowhere near as good as the alien base we saw in Astro Monster, and not as impressive as the red bamboo base in the last film. But the many opening towers which release weather balloons do have a Tracy Island vibe, and I half expected to see Thunderbird 1 launch. There's very little destruction here, and you can see how money has been saved. Masaru Sato provides the score again rather than Akira Ifukube, and Jun Fukuda rather than Ishiro Honda directs. And this next generation don't seem to be able to capture the magic like the trio of Honda, Tsuburaya and Ifukube did. Even the inclusion of a celebrated Toho and Godzilla actor doesn't inject much needed oomph. And that face is, of course, Akihiko Hirata. This is his 5th appearance in a Godzilla film. There are many other familiar faces here too, with Hirata being the most notable, alongside Kenji Sahara and Yoshio Tsuchiya. The human aspect of this film lacks drama. The stakes are low, all they need to do is get off the island or keep away from the giant insects. There's no city to get destroyed, the base is already destroyed by the blast, and actually, if they all perished, then it could be for the better, as it might mean the end of a process which could be weaponized. The film feels a bit silly at times, and it's clearly aimed at children, but that tropical setting feels different, and that helps it to get away with being a different type of film. The music accompanying the opening credits indicates we're in for something a little more childish than what we've been used to, and what we've gotten used to has been pretty childish at times. The film continues that bright use of primary colours. At a time when most domestic TVs were black and white, those coloured buildings and technology with bright yellows and reds must have looked really punchy, and the film stock used gives the reds a really sumptuous look, which gives strong nostalgic vibes. It's something which really sets these films apart from modern digital techniques, especially at a time when filmmakers are obsessed with blue tints and desaturation. This film might be lower budget, but it's not thrown together. I've already mentioned the excellent Gimantis and Kumonga creatures, but the miniatures, although there are less of them than usual, look great too. The model of the base looks just like the full-size one, and it's often difficult to tell which is full-size and which isn't. The shots of the radio tower and trees being hit with lightning work really well. The sweeping vistas look very cinematic too. It's a competently directed film, however, there are some issues with the production. The soundstage is huge, and the backdrops generally look good, but you can see vertical lines on the backdrop sometimes. At one point you can see the top of the set with the rigging, something which would be really easy to fix in post these days, but would have been trickier then, though not impossible, and I can't imagine Ishiro Honda letting that pass into the main print if he were directing. There are good use of matte paintings in the film which clearly took some effort to produce, and some effective use of either compositing or rear projection. Despite the crap Godzilla head, a hideous Baby G suit and some production flaws, I feel this film is panned more than it deserves to be. This is quite a divisive film. Some love the camp comedy and the parent-child dynamic, and some just think it's weak. I've gone full circle. I loved this when I was a kid. Then I ended up not being able to get past the irritating Godzilla hatchling, but now I really see the value this brings to the Godzilla franchise. Son of Godzilla did deliver 2 fantastic creatures in the form of giant praying mantises and a giant spider. They may not have the ability to spit lightning, but they are probably 2 of the scariest creatures in the whole franchise, possibly because they tap into existing creepy crawly fears. And come on, that second Baby G suit, it isn't that bad. I like it. Don't blame Son of Godzilla for turning Godzilla into a silly franchise. I think people forget how daft King Kong vs Godzilla, Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster and Invasion of Astro Monster were. Godzilla had already become silly some years before we got to this film. So if you hate Son of Godzilla, give it another go. You might be surprised at how much you like it. And goodbye.